When a desperate single mother mistakenly texts a billionaire CEO asking for diaper money, she never expects a reply, let alone $4,000, and a trail of life-changing surprises. Nora Bell, 28, stood in her tiny apartment in the rusted outskirts of Melridge, a city known more for its shuttered factories than its fortunes. Her toddler Ezra wailed in the background. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Nora wore a faded sweatshirt with holes at the sleeves, her blonde hair tangled, eyes heavy with fatigue. With trembling fingers and an overdrawn account, she typed out a message. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I don't know what else to do. I need $40 just to buy diapers. I understand if you can't." She thought she was texting her brother's old contact. But the number belonged to Damien Rourke, 41, the reclusive CEO of Rourke Global, a man known for his cold efficiency and $3 billion net worth. Damien, pale-skinned, tall, often dressed in tailored charcoal suits, hadn't smiled since the tragic loss of his daughter 2 years ago. His nights were sleepless, haunted by memories, until that strange message lit up his screen. Damien Rourke reclined in his Manhattan penthouse office, wearing his usual monochrome suit, his expression emotionless. His assistant had just canceled his charity meeting. Again, he stared at his late daughter's number, one he hadn't deleted. Then the message popped up. It wasn't spam. It was heartbreak. He reread it. Something about the tone, the desperation, the humility. It jolted him in a way business deals never could. Without replying, he wired $4,000 to the account attached to the old number. A quiet whisper crossed his lips. "This one's for you, Charlie." He stared at the skyline beyond his glass wall as a tear slipped down his cheek. The next morning, Nora jolted awake as her phone buzzed. The text from her bank made her heart skip. "You've received a deposit of $4,000. "What?" she gasped. Her heart pounded. Was it a scam? Did someone make a mistake? Her brown eyes widened, her chapped lips parted in disbelief. She held Ezra closer, still in his pajamas with cartoon clouds. She dialed the number, no answer. Then came a delivery: diapers, baby wipes, formula, and a note that read, "Take care of your boy, someone's watching over you." No name, only gratitude and mystery. Nora paced her living room with Ezra on her hip, her thoughts swirling. Who would send $4,000 without asking questions? What kind of person responded to a stranger's accidental text with this much compassion? Her instincts screamed it couldn't be real. But the money was already in her account. The supplies were real. The formula she fed Ezra with that morning, real. The strange hand-signed note left her curious. Someone was watching out for her. She thought of returning the money, but she didn't even know who to return it to. Her calls to the number went unanswered, her messages left undelivered. After much hesitation, she wrote a short text. "I don't know who you are, but you saved my son and me today. Thank you. I don't have much, but I'll pay it forward when I can." There was no response. Later that evening, she put Ezra to bed and opened her old laptop. She tried tracing the number online. Nothing useful. Still, she smiled for the first time in weeks. The weight on her chest felt a little lighter. That night, she dreamed of a faceless man reaching out a hand through a fog of sorrow, and her hand reaching back. Little did she know the man behind the silence was fighting a storm of his own. Damien Rourke wasn't used to silence in his own head. Normally it was filled with calculations, deadlines, and quarterly reports. But since Charlotte, his only daughter, passed away from a rare illness 2 years ago, silence had turned into grief. Loud, choking grief. It followed him everywhere, like a shadow stitched into his skin. He stared at his phone again, rereading Nora's thank you message. Her words struck a chord buried deep within him. "You saved my son and me today," he whispered. "I couldn't save my daughter, but maybe I can help someone else." Damien didn't reply to her message. He didn't want to open the door between them yet. But for the first time in a long time, he felt something stirring inside, purpose. He made a quiet call to a friend in HR at a regional office in Westport, a small city near Nora's last known delivery address. "There's someone who deserves a chance," he said. "No resume required, just an interview." "Damien," the friend replied, "this is unlike you." "I know," he said. "Let's keep it that way." The powerful CEO who had spent years behind fortress-like walls was slowly lowering the drawbridge, not for charity, for connection. 3 days later, Nora received a call she didn't expect. "Hi, is this Nora Bell?" came a warm, professional voice. "Yes, speaking. This is Monica Grant from Darrow & Wynn Logistics. We're expanding in the area and came across your name through a recommendation. We'd like to invite you for an interview." Nora blinked, confused. She had applied to dozens of places with no luck for months. She hadn't even heard of Darrow & Wynn. Still, she agreed. Anything that could help her son was worth it. That Friday, she stood outside the company's modest regional office wearing a second-hand blazer and borrowed heels. Her hair was neatly tied, and nervous energy buzzed in her chest. She looked at Ezra's picture in her wallet and whispered, "This is for you, baby." The interview was warm and brief. They didn't grill her on experience. They asked about her life, her goals. A woman named Monica smiled as she slid a job offer across the table. "You've got grit, Nora," she said. "We need people like you." Nora left with a full-time offer, childcare support, and benefits that made her eyes well with tears. Someone out there was lifting her higher, and she still didn't know who, but she would, very soon. Nora walked home that day feeling taller. The weight of endless no's and silent rejections finally felt lighter. For once she didn't have to choose between rent and Ezra's medicine. She felt seen, but as she unpacked the offer letter at her kitchen table, questions returned. Who recommended her? Who even knew she was looking? She remembered the strange number again. Was this person behind it too? That night she sat in bed with Ezra curled against her chest, scrolling through job forums and trying to trace any sign of Darrow and Wynn reaching out to candidates like her. Nothing, no job posts, no ads. This wasn't luck, it was design. But why and who? As if summoned by her thoughts, a new delivery came the next morning. A box on her doorstep, no name, no return address. Inside, a soft blue blanket, a framed quote that read, "You are stronger than you think," and a children's book titled, "Stars for Charlotte." Nora's breath caught. The name, Charlotte. Who was she? And why did that name, stitched on the book's cover in gold, feel like a thread between two broken worlds ready to be tied? Nora clutched the book in her hands as she sat cross-legged on the floor. The name Charlotte echoed in her mind like a soft hum. She opened the book and found no handwritten note, no inscription, just a simple printed dedication on the first page. To the little lights that never go out. It felt personal, too personal to be coincidence. She pulled out her phone and did a deep search. Charlotte Rourke. Within moments, articles filled her screen. Charlotte Rourke, daughter of tech billionaire Damien Rourke, dies at age 9 after long battle with leukemia. There it was, her stomach dropped. Damien, Charlotte, Rourke Global. She'd heard the name before in passing news clips but never connected it. The realization hit like a wave. She had texted that number. It wasn't her brother's old contact. It was Damien's daughter's phone. Somehow that number still received texts. She whispered, "No wonder." Suddenly, it all made sense. The silence, the money, the job, the gifts. But one question stood above the rest. Why her? Why would a billionaire who'd lost everything care about her and her son? She didn't know it yet, but Damien was wondering the same thing about her. Damien sat in the back row of a Westport charity event, far from the cameras, dressed in an uncharacteristically simple navy coat. No tie, no press. He wasn't there for the mayor or the speeches. He was there because he'd learned Nora had accepted the job offer and would be attending this company-sponsored fundraiser with the rest of the new hires. He wanted to see her, just once, no introductions, no explanations. When she stepped onto the modest stage, holding Ezra on her hip, something twisted in Damien's chest. Her smile, shy but proud. Her posture, still a little uncertain but getting stronger. And the way she held her son with protective love made his throat tighten. Ezra giggled into the mic when she introduced herself, and the crowd laughed softly. Damien didn't smile, but he felt warmth again. A flicker of something he'd lost the night Charlotte took her last breath. He left before the event ended. But before walking out, he handed a check to the foundation director, made in Charlotte's name. He didn't want recognition, just to leave a mark, just to keep doing good in the dark. The following Monday, Nora arrived at work to find a card on her desk. Inside was a simple typed message. "Thank you for showing up, for your son, for yourself, and for those who've forgotten how to begin again." No signature. She read it 3 times. No one else in the office received one. And none of her coworkers had any idea where it came from. "Maybe it's from the CEO," Monica joked. "He loves sending weird, poetic stuff to staff." Nora smiled politely, but deep down she knew. It wasn't just poetic, it was specific. It was him, the man behind the number. She didn't know what to do with the knowledge. Part of her wanted to call him, to thank him. The other part hesitated. Was she overstepping? Was it even appropriate to cross the line between grateful recipient and curious stranger? That night she composed a message but didn't send it. Instead, she read the Stars for Charlotte book to Ezra before bed. He clutched the soft blue blanket around his small shoulders as she read, his tiny hand resting on her knee. Damien didn't know it yet, but his daughter's light was already shining in a stranger's living room. It was nearly midnight when Nora finally gave in to the voice in her heart. She picked up her phone and typed, "I know who you are now. I don't know what to say except, thank you. You didn't just help me. You reminded me that good people still exist. I hope you're okay, and I hope Charlotte knows her name lives on. You've given me and Ezra more than money, you gave us hope." She hovered her finger over the send button, nerves prickling her skin. Then tap, message sent. She didn't expect a reply. She had made peace with that. But she needed him to know, not for closure but for connection. She turned her phone face down on the table and stared out her window, watching the street lamps flicker in the distance. Somewhere in this wide, messy world, a man she'd never met had changed everything. And now he knew she knew. She didn't sleep much that night, not out of worry but wonder. Was this the end of the story, or was it just beginning? Damien read her message 3 times, then a 4th. He hadn't planned for this. He had expected anonymity to be the boundary between his grief and his goodwill, but Nora had stepped over it, not with entitlement but with grace. His fingers hovered over his phone. He hadn't responded to a personal message in months, maybe years. But this wasn't business. This was something else. He typed, "Charlotte was the kindest soul I ever knew. Helping you, it gave me a way to feel her light again. You didn't owe me anything, but you gave something back I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to meet, if you're willing. Send." It was terrifying, not because of who she was but because of who he wasn't anymore. The man he used to be before Charlotte, confident, composed, collected, was gone. Now he was just Damien, a grieving father, a quiet soul searching for meaning. And somehow Nora Bell had stepped into the silence he'd lived in and filled it with light. Nora agreed to meet at a quiet public cafe in the historic district. It wasn't fancy, just peaceful, comfortable. She wore a soft green blouse and her best jeans. Ezra was with her neighbor for the afternoon. Her hands were clammy. She hadn't dated since Ezra's father left, and this wasn't even a date. Damien arrived 5 minutes early. He wore a navy sweater over a collared shirt and looked nothing like the photos online. He looked human. Tired but kind. There were lines of sadness around his gray-blue eyes and his brown hair was slightly tousled like he hadn't tried too hard. He smiled gently as she approached. "You must be Nora," she nodded, nervous. "And you must be the man who saved my life." "No," he said quietly, "you saved mine." They sat and talked over coffee. No pretenses, no scripted lines, just stories. He told her about Charlotte. She told him about Ezra. They spoke about loss and loneliness, but also resilience and second chances. There were tears, there were laughs. And when Nora thanked him again, Damien said something that would echo in her heart for years. Maybe we were meant to find each other, not to fix our pain, but to carry it together. It was a week later when Nora introduced Damien to Ezra. She wasn't sure what to expect. Ezra was shy with strangers. But the moment Damien walked through the door holding a stuffed animal dog in one hand and a children's book in the other, Ezra's eyes lit up. "Doggy," Ezra shouted, grabbing the plush toy from Damien's hand. Damien smiled warmly. "He's yours. His name is Copper." Ezra hugged the toy and sat on the rug, gesturing for Damien to join him. It was the first time in years that Damien knelt down on a floor for playtime. He didn't feel stiff. He felt at home. Nora watched from the kitchen doorway, heart swelling. Damien read from the book, his deep voice gentle and patient. Ezra laughed and clapped as Damien made silly voices for the characters. Afterward, when Ezra drifted off to sleep on the couch, Nora and Damien sat beside him, close but quiet. "He's amazing," Damien said, eyes on the sleeping boy. "And you're incredible, raising him on your own." Nora touched his hand briefly. "Thank you for seeing us." They sat in silence for a while. And in that silence something grew, a comfort, a trust, a beginning neither of them had dared to imagine. Nora's birthday arrived, and she hadn't planned anything special. Birthdays were a luxury she didn't allow herself anymore. But Damien had other plans. He invited her to a quiet garden restaurant, not extravagant but tastefully decorated with lanterns and hanging ivy. When she arrived, she was met not with crowds or cameras, but a table for 3. Him, Nora, and a high chair for Ezra. There was a small cake with her name on it, and a gift box wrapped in silver ribbon. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small star charm. "It's for the stars you helped me see again," Damien said. Nora's eyes filled with tears. She looked at him, not as a billionaire, not as a miracle in disguise, but as a man, one who had given her dignity, and peace, and maybe just maybe love. Ezra smashed cake into his face and they all laughed until their stomachs hurt. It was the kind of night that stitched itself into memory forever. Nora's life began to bloom in quiet ways. With her new job, she could afford better daycare, a reliable car, and finally start saving. But her bond with Damien grew deeper than material change. They weren't officially together, but something undeniably real was building. Trust, understanding, companionship. Then came the headlines. A gossip blog leaked a blurry photo of Damien with a woman and child outside a bookstore. Reclusive CEO found love in small-town mom, it speculated. Suddenly, reporters swarmed and Nora's phone exploded with calls and questions. Her boss pulled her aside. "We'll support you, but you should be prepared. This could get messy." Damien was furious, not at her but at the intrusion. He'd tried for so long to keep his life private. But now someone had shattered that barrier. "I never wanted this for you," he told her. Nora took his hand. "You gave me more than I ever asked for. If the price is being seen with you, I'm okay with that." Still, they had to talk about Ezra, about exposure, about protection. And for the first time they talked about what it meant to be a family, what it meant to walk through fire together, not just separately. One rainy evening, Damien took Nora and Ezra to Charlotte's Memorial Garden. It was a small space tucked into the city park, planted with her favorite white tulips and lavender, with a bronze bench bearing her name. Nora held Ezra's hand as they walked between the blooms, the scent of wet earth and flowers blending with quiet remembrance. "This is her place," Damien said. "I come here when I need to feel close to her." He pulled something from his coat pocket, a folded drawing. It was Charlotte's last drawing, a little girl holding hands with a faceless woman and a small child. "When I first got your message," he said, "I wondered if she somehow brought us together." Nora pressed her hand to her mouth, tears rising. "She did," she whispered. They sat together on the bench. Ezra climbed onto Damien's lap and pointed at a butterfly resting on a flower. "Look," he said. Damien smiled. Charlotte loved butterflies. That night they didn't speak much, but they left holding hands, and in the silent space where grief once lived alone, love now grew. Weeks passed and spring bloomed in full. Nora's world no longer felt like a storm waiting to break. It felt like sunrise. Damien offered to buy her a new home, a safer neighborhood, closer to her job. But she refused the gift, suggesting a compromise instead. "Help me invest in something I can own myself, not a handout, a start." He respected her even more for that. Together they found a cozy cottage with a backyard where Ezra could play. Nora paid most of it with her earnings and savings. Damien quietly helped with the legal work. It was hers, earned, built. On moving day they painted walls with Ezra, laughed as they got paint in their hair, ordered pizza and ate on the floor. It wasn't a mansion, but it was home. And when Damien tucked Ezra in that night and whispered, "You're safe now, little guy," Nora watched with her heart in her throat. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. On the anniversary of Charlotte's passing, Nora organized something small, something pure. Together, she, Damien, and Ezra went to the highest hill in Westport with 3 white balloons. They wrote messages on little tags. Nora's, "Thank you for guiding him to us." Damien's, "I miss you every day, but I found light again." Ezra's scribbled in crayon, "Hi Charlotte, I love dogs too." They let the balloons go into the sky. Damien's hand found Nora's. He didn't cry, not this time. He smiled, eyes glistening. "I thought I'd never feel love again," he said softly. "But it found me when I wasn't looking." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Love always finds the lost." They watched the balloons vanish into the clouds, carrying grief and healing in the same breath. And Charlotte, wherever she was smiling too. Nora often thought about the day she'd typed that desperate message. How one wrong number led to the right person. How sorrow introduced her to someone who didn't just change her life, but chose to walk through it with her. Damien was no longer just the man behind the wire transfer. He was the bedtime story voice, the morning coffee companion, the person who held her fears with tenderness. They weren't a fairy tale. They were real, sometimes tired, sometimes emotional, but always choosing each other. One night Damien knelt before Nora, Ezra beside him, holding a small box. "No headlines, no grand speeches," he said. "Just this, you and Ezra gave me back my life. Will you let me spend the rest of it with both of you?" Nora dropped to her knees with a laugh choked. "Yes." And with that, what started as a mistake became the most beautiful accident of all. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more unforgettable tales of love, second chances, and the magic of fate.